everybody. Welcome to Why Eagles Why, our weekly look at the Philadelphia Eagles, and this week a bonus look because the Dallas Cowboys game is up next. Dave Bontempo, Pete Amato, Bill Gelman, and joining us today is Matt Becker from HowAboutThem.com. Glad you're with us. You know how we do the show. 4 quarters plus an overtime segment. Please hit like and subscribe to be notified about future videos. All right, as we break the huddle, Eagles, Cowboys, a little bit of a different game now based on recent developments. Pete, will come to you first. Surprised you're not dressed like Gardner Minshew or that he's not dressed like you today. But tell us your perspective on the game based on, what you've seen over the last 24 hours or so.
I was going into it thinking the Eagles could win this easily. They don't have as much on the line. I know if they win, they clinch the first seed. The Cowboys is kind of in more of a do or die situation for them, especially where they line up in the playoff rankings. They're going to want the highest seed they can possibly get. Mathematically, they still have a chance at the number 1 seed, but I don't see that happening. I don't think Cowboys fans see that happening. But yeah, I was going into it pretty comfortable. Now, I'm a little iffy, but I'm still pretty confident in the Eagles. I just think they're overall a much more talented team than the Cowboys. I know I play around and call it the cockroach and stuff like that, but I really do. I just think from top to bottom, and I think the Cowboys have just been really inconsistent this year. I think the Eagles have been the opposite. But especially at quarterback, they've been consistent. And I think Minshew is a good backup. I'm a Minshew fan. Obviously, he's not Jalen Hurts, but I think he is a good backup. We have a great offensive line. We have a great run game. And I think if they just lean on the run game, I think the Eagles still pull this one out.
Bill, the line moved from Dallas -1 to Dallas -6 when the news of Jalen Hurts' shoulder strain came out. So, the books are saying that Jalen Hurts is worth about 5 points to the line, which is high praise for him. How do you see the impact of Jalen Hurts not being in there for this game?
Wouldn't it be interesting if this is all a play and Jalen Hurts actually plays this weekend?
And then you get the Eagles. You get the Eagles +6.
Yeah. So it's the reality is Jalen Hurts is one player and he does a lot of magic on the field, but the Eagles have one of the top offensive lines in the game. They have Miles Sanders, a great running back when they decide to give him the ball, and he's not. I don't know if I put him on the same page as Tony Pollard right now, but he's reliable, and they have two of the best wide receivers in the NFC right now. So and Dallas Goedert is activated. So there's a lot of pieces, and it seems when the Eagles get that underdog vibe, nice things happen in this town. So, we'll see if the Minshew mania, underdog mania plays a role this Saturday, excuse me. I'm used to playing on Sundays.
That's right. It will be a big slate of NFL games on Saturday this week. Matt, it's great to see you again. When we had you here before the first Eagles-Cowboys game, there was a consensus among all of us that this could be a split series, that the Eagles would win the game in Philadelphia, and on Christmas Eve, that was going to be Dallas's game. Do you feel that way, that there's more of a strong pull that way now among the Dallas faithful, given the news that the Philadelphia Eagles have received regarding Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, I'm pretty active on Cowboys Twitter. I run our How About Them 88s, our ad on Twitter. And people aren't even really talking about the Eagles game, which is unfortunate because it was such a hyped game, especially after the first matchup. Everyone was thinking, this is the division's on the line for this Week 16 game here. But Dallas fans aren't even really focused on the Eagles because they're just still so irate and upset after that 17-point blown lead that no one's really even focused. I'm sure late as the week goes on and the focus starts to shift from last week to next game, people will start focusing on it more. But obviously, I would rather face, and I never wish injury on players, but of course, as a Cowboys writer, you'd rather face Gardner Minshew than Jalen Hurts. But they still have that defense, which is a stellar defense, and the Eagles they still have AJ Brown. They still have Devontae Smith, who's been playing really, really well the last few weeks. He's been almost playing just as well as AJ Brown. They still have Miles Sanders. They still have that really good offensive line. So I think the line was at Cowboys -6 last night, which I'm sure we'll get to predictions later. I do think the Cowboys will squeak out a win, but put them at -6 is a little bit it's a little lofty. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it'll be that much of a point differential in the final score.
Now in New Jersey, when I was watching the Cowboys and the Jacksonville Jaguars, my phone with text lit up with outraged bettors and fans when Mike McCarthy threw the bomb with 56 seconds to go, incomplete, allowing Jacksonville to keep a timeout, which they then used on the final play of the game to force overtime. Now, that was just the people in New Jersey who were following the game and had parlays linked in with the Cowboys. What was the reaction in the Twitter universe where you were? What was the reaction in Cowboys Nation about McCarthy and that play at the end of regulation?
From what I saw, it was a little bit more split than you'd think, probably, because hindsight 2020, seeing the ball go out of bounds and seeing the stop clock, you're thinking, what the hell are you doing? Whereas if he completes that throw, and it was a tough, it would have been an acrobatic play by Noah Brown. Had he made the catch, it was a good throw to the sideline. Had he made the catch, it would have iced the game. So hindsight's 2020, but it was a little bit more split than you would have thought. Then obviously the defense still had, I think there's about a $1.30 left in the game. They punted away, and the defense still had a chance to close the game out and get a stop. They only had one timeout. They had to march down the field. So while you could say that McCarthy deserves some blame, or Kellen Moore, really, because he's the offensive play caller, Kellen Moore deserves some of the blame for making that call rather than playing it conservative and just running it up the middle, getting a few yards. The defense also had a chance to stop them and to not let them get into field goal range, and they failed. So there was some heat. Some people like the call going for it, being risky. Some people, play it conservative there, just make them use the timeout. But ultimately, the people are more mad at anything than the defense because they haven't really showed up the last 2 weeks. They had a chance to, they let up, they didn't have a very good game up to that point, but they could have, kind of put that past them, get a stop there, win the game, but they didn't do it. So the outrage is kind of split between Kellen Moore for the play call as well as the defense for not getting the job done at the end.
All right, we're going to take a closer look at the Eagles and the Cowboys, the game itself in the second quarter. Second quarter of Why Eagles Why. Cowboys must have the game against the Eagles. The Eagles, well, nice if you get it. Doesn't really matter that much if you don't. The key is Jalen Hurts. Pete, what is your key to this game with the Eagles and the Cowboys, and what are you seeing in the developments here in the middle of the week?
Well, as far as the developments, as we were recording, I saw the line actually changed in all the books, all the bigger books. At DraftKings, the line's at 5 now, and
Wow.
the rest of them looks like about 5.5. So, I mean, people are liking that line for the Eagles. I don't blame them. I think, like Matt said, 6 points is a lot, especially when it jumped that much for one player. Granted, he's maybe the MVP of the year, but that's a big jump, especially for a division matchup. As far as keys to the game, I think the Eagles have to do what they didn't do in this past week, and they just have to commit to the run. The thing with Miles Sanders, he hasn't had a bad game as far as his average rushing yards. Every time you give him the ball, he gets at least 3-4 yards. But they sometimes Sirianni and staff, they just seem that they just get pass happy, and I think we've seen that with many Eagles teams in the past. And I think with Jalen Hurts out, you need to stick to the run, even if it's not working at first. You have to commit to the run. You have arguably the best offensive line in football. Miles Sanders is a really good quarterback. You have a couple of good backups. You just got to commit to the run. And maybe if it's not working after a half, maybe switch and go maybe like an RPO type offense, which I think they'll probably do anyway, because Minshew can kind of run both. And on defense, they need to stay aggressive. They can't play not to lose this game. They have to play to win the game. And me, I'm not a fan of Jonathan Gannon. I think he plays not to lose a lot, and he kind of gets bailed out by the talent around on the defense. But if you play not to lose against this team, Dak will dink and dunk his way down the field. He's a smart quarterback. He's not going to try to go over the top like a lot of these young quarterbacks have tried to do. And you need to stay aggressive on defense, commit to the run on offense. And I think if the Eagles do that, I think they'll be all right. I think they'll get a comfortable win.
All right, Bill, kind of a bonus question here for you last week and of this week. Some people who were watching the Eagles game last week thought they were sluggish. They thought the cold was bothering them, that they never really got that jump start. So like your thoughts on that. And then your thoughts on the key to this game.
Okay. Well, in terms of the first half of the game, believe it or not, I actually did not see the game. I was actually out, and the Eagles still finished a way to win. But looking at the one thing that popped out in my mind is Miles Sanders didn't have a touch till 24 minutes into the game, and that was for when he finally got the ball, was only for 1 yard. So piggybacking on what Pete said, you can't wait that long to get Miles Sanders involved in the offense. Dallas, the last 3 weeks, have given up over 100 yards rushing. And the Eagles have the top offensive line in the game. And you got to take advantage of that, establish the run, mix in the pass, especially if Minshew does end up playing this week. This early in the week, things can change with these injury reports. So, but I'm thinking that they're going to be relying more on the run this week, and the Eagles seem to be, at least the last few weeks, adjusting to their opponent's strengths and weaknesses in terms of the game plan goes.
All right, so we'll see how it works out and how the Eagles utilize either Gardner Minshew and Jalen Hurts. Now, Matt, there's the feeling that this game lays right for Dallas because the Eagles don't have to have it. The Dallas Cowboys do have to have it. Does that factor into this game? What do you think are the keys to this game?
I mean, I think you gotta think, well, yeah, the Cowboys need to have it, obviously. They're locked into the 5th seed pretty well. Yeah, I think they just need to win 1 or 2 of the next 3 games, and then they'll obviously play the winner of the NFC South, which is a dumpster fire. So that kind of plays into Dallas's hands a little bit. But yeah, I mean, you got to think the Eagles should be coming out, even though they have nothing to play for. They almost lost to the Bears, who the Bears are. They have, Justin Fields is a monster, but they're one of the worst teams in football record wise. So, it being a divisional game, the Eagles coming off of a near loss to the Bears, and then the Cowboys. I think the Eagles will be up for the game. I obviously I'm not in the locker room, so I can't say for sure, but I'd be hard pressed to believe they're going to come out sluggish again. And then for the Cowboys side, they need to right the ship. The fans, the media are losing their minds in Dallas right now over what the future holds for the rest of the season here, rightfully so, after they barely squeaked out a win versus the Texans 2 weeks ago, who, by the record, I believe are the worst team in football. And then they obviously lost in heartbreaking fashion to the Jaguars last week. But I'm going to sound like a broken record. I think it kind of similar to what Pete and Bill both emphasized. I think the Cowboys ground game, any offense, the game plan is to establish the run. That opens things up down the field. That's no different for the Cowboys. They played well in the first half versus the Jaguars, running the ball. They had about 91 yards, and they put up 21 points. The second half, they only scored 13 points, only ran for about 60 yards. So that definitely goes hand in hand. The offense goes in, and Jerry Jones says it he loves Zeke Elliott, obviously, but he says it like every other week. The offense goes as Zeke goes. But as a whole, the offense goes as Zeke and Pollard are running the ball. So they definitely need to figure that part of the game out. Rely less on Dak to be throwing the ball downfield. He's been having interception problems. And defensively, we'll touch on it more later on in the show here. But defensively, they're just not getting the same rush on the QB they've been getting earlier on in the season. They had 0 sacks versus the Texans. They only had 1 sack versus the Jaguars. So offensively, they need to establish the run game, and obviously things will open up downfield in the passing game based off that. And then the defense definitely has its share of the defense definitely has to take a lion's share of the blame, in my opinion. And we'll get to that later on, but they have to take a lion's share of the blame for the struggles last 2 weeks, in my opinion.
All right, we will get to that, and we'll leave you with the thought before we get there that, yes, the Cowboys up 27-10 in the second half of any game. Earlier this year, that was like putting money in Fort Knox, and that was different last week. So we will have more on this game and both teams in the third quarter of Why Eagles Why. Third quarter of Why Eagles Why. We're going to focus on defense. Game in Big D. Defense is a huge matter between these teams. Pete, you're up first. What do you think about the Eagles defense and what you see and what you need to see this week?
Well, as far as talent and depth, I think the Eagles are up there with any other defense in the league. I mean, they have great talent on defense. Their defensive line is, with the addition of Sue, I think they're number one defensive line right now, last few games anyway, against the run and the pass. In my opinion, I think they've increased the talent greatly on the defensive line, with Jordan Davis back too. So, I mean, and then their secondary has looked great all season. I know we had a few injuries, but people stepped up and they stepped up big. So I'm not really worried about the talent or anything on the defense as far as the players. Again, it's just Jonathan Gannon has to call an aggressive game. He has to, like I said in the first quarter, he has to not play to not lose. He has to play to win, and that's how we have to beat an offense like this, because their offense isn't super powerful. They have a couple. They have a good running back. They have a solid wide receiver crew. But there's not like one big name receiver on that team that can beat you. So we need to get pressure on Dak. Dak has been like a turnover machine this season, especially when there's pressure on him. So I think, but you got to keep him in the pocket too, because he does like kind of getting out of the pocket. As far as the Cowboys defense, I think they're overrated now. I mean, I know they're what, the number 3 ranked defense in the league as far as points, but I mean, the last 3 games they gave up average of like 400 yards. So I just don't think that's the same defense that we saw the first couple of weeks of the season. I don't think they're like the number 1 defense in the league like they proclaimed in the beginning of the season. So I mean, I think the Eagles have a way better defense, and I think as long as Jonathan Gannon puts our guys in the right position and lets them use their talent to the best of their abilities, I think we'll be fine. I think the Eagles far and wide have a better defense than the Cowboys.
No, I think coming off the last game, Bill, for me, that was the game of Hassan Reddick's life. That he was in that backfield, and the Eagles were a sack pack. But you look at this game overall, and you've uncovered some interesting research about both defenses.
Yeah, in terms of these two defenses, you're talking about the number 1, number 2 teams in turnover differential. Eagles are plus 12, Cowboys are plus 9. So could a turnover, especially, is Minshew going to play? A turnover, as in last week's Cowboys game, you can see a turnover makes a huge difference in the game. And that's not the only, it seemed to be the theme around the NFL last week as far as turnovers changing the story of some games last weekend. So it'd be interesting to see how the defensive backs match up with the wide receivers. And if it comes down to 1 or 2 turnovers changing the storyline of this game, there's definitely talent on both sides of the ball for both teams. So it's just a matter of, does that turnover end up being 1 or 2 turnovers end up being a difference in this game? The game's in Dallas, so Dallas is obviously going to, want to win in front of their fans after that showing last week. So they have that extra motivation. Eagles can just, take care of business this week and essentially treat the next 2 weeks as preseason games because they'll have nothing left to play for. So it'd be interesting to see how if this ends up being the offense tells the story or the defense tells the story.
I'm going to go into that a little deeper with you guys, and then we're going to go to Matt. Just a thought to throw out there. CeeDee Lamb has been a breakaway threat for the Cowboys. Do you think we see Slay on him? How do you think the Eagles are going to cover the Cowboys' top receiver? What kind of an alignment, Pete, would you see that they might try? Do you think they put Slay on him? How do you feel that they go after CD Lamb?
I think Slay might stick on him most of the game. But I don't think Slay is, and I think a lot of Cowboys fans will agree, I don't think he's that stereotypical number one receiver. I think that's they thought they were going to get out of him. He has looked good a few games this season, but I don't think it's going to be like a big game plan just to keep Slay chasing him around all game. I think Slay will probably line up on him most of the game, but I don't think it'll be a big deal if he lines up on the other side, if they're in like a man coverage on the other side. I think we have a great secondary on both sides. Slay is obviously one of the best secondary defensive backs in the league, but the other side isn't too shabby either.
Bill, you see a similar situation as far as how they would attack CeeDee Lamb?
Yeah, I think so. I think, CeeDee Lamb's obviously going to get most of the attention because he's their top wide receiver. But I think if you flip it over to the Eagles side of the ball, you have two receivers that can rack up 100 yards a game. Cowboys really don't have that situation anymore. So maybe the Eagles give up I could see the Eagles giving up the short passes, where they just, like they did against Washington, and then just buckle up when it gets to third down or in the red zone. But it'll be, we harassed Jonathan Gagnon all season here, so you don't know what he has cooking up behind the scenes, but you would think you would put their top defensive back on the Cowboys' top receiver.
All right, Matt, we know that some of your sources have just reached out to you about some comments regarding the Hurts and Minshew situation. So what are your thoughts on that? And what are your thoughts overall on the Dallas defense, what they need to do and where they're at right now?
Yeah, well, I'll start. I'll kind of piggyback off. I'll get to the defense. I'll kind of want to piggyback off of what the wide receiver conversation. I think the Cowboys wide receiver, like their performance this week, will be a fun storyline to follow and fun to watch in the game. CeeDee Lamb's been playing really well, but Michael Gallup, he only had one catch for 2 yards last week against the Jaguars, and a similar thing happened earlier in the year. Kellen Moore caught flack from the media, and he force fed Gallup the ball the next game, and he had one of his best games of the season. The Cowboys also signed T.Y. Hilton last week, who I obviously he's not going to have the same production he had years ago with the Colts. He's aged now. He hasn't played all season. He's been at home with his family. He's been a free agent up to this point, but they're saying he still has the breakaway speed to take the top off the defense. So that'll definitely help kind of, extend plays downfield or kind of open up things in the middle of the field if he's streaking down the field. So I think the wide receiver matchups will be interesting for the Cowboys. But as for the defense, I have to defend the Cowboys defense a little bit against Pete there. He said they're overrated. I can't defend their play. They allowed 500 yards versus the Jaguars last week. They allowed 40 points versus the Jaguars, so I can't defend too much there. But the part that I'll defend is that the reason they're not playing as well is because of a lot of injuries, which is a bit of a cop-out. We're going into week 16 of the NFL, so every defense is dealing with injuries. But they've just had really bad injury luck at cornerback especially. So coming into the season, Jordan Lewis was their cornerback too. He got hurt in about week 5 or 6, I believe, versus the Lions. He's out for the year. I think it was against the Texans. Anthony Brown got injured. He's on IR. So they threw Calvin Joseph in at cornerback too, and he got torched last week. They even benched him because he just wasn't playing very well. Zay Jones had 3 touchdowns. I'm not sure if they were all on Calvin Joseph, but the Cowboys now have an open competition at cornerback too between Calvin Joseph, Nashawn Wright, Trayvon Mullen is a guy they just signed off of waivers last week, and then the fourth guy is a rookie, Deron Bland. So having an open competition for cornerback too going into week 16 is the last thing you want to see for your defense. So that definitely is not going to bode well considering the Eagles have AJ Brown, they have Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert's back, so that doesn't bode very well. And then as for the run defense, That was a big struggle for the Cowboys. Earlier on in the year, they had no problems rushing the quarterback, getting sacks, but their biggest weakness was run defense. So they traded for Jonathan Hankins from the Raiders. It took him a few weeks, but he was coming into his own. And then he suffered an injury versus the Texans as well. So he's out to the playoffs. He's a big, he's like a, 350 plus pound defensive tackle who was stuffing up the middle. And then Leighton Vander Esch also versus the Jaguars. He got injured. He has a shoulder injury, and he's already been ruled out by Mike McCarthy for the Eagles game. So I'll defend them in the fact that a big reason for their defensive, their lack of strong play on defense is because of the injuries. I'll defend against that, but yeah, their performance hasn't been great, and I'm a little bit worried. Obviously, facing Minshew versus Hurts will make things easier for the defense, but I'm expecting them to just pound the rock on the ground versus the Cowboys, and losing Hankins, the big guy in the middle at the defensive tackle spot, and then losing Van Der Esch, it just doesn't bode very well. So I'm a little bit concerned about what we're going to see from the Dallas Cowboys defense this week. I'll be honest.
All right. Well,
very, very soft team. Sounds like
very soft team.
Lot of injuries to this team. Wow. Sad.
Wait, Pete loves to go off on the Cowboys, Matt. So
this is the guys from Philly they're all big and bad and tough. Yeah.
Yeah, you're just feeding the monster here.
I'm being honest. It sucks. I wish they were playing better, and I wish I could rub it in Pete's face about how much better they're playing than the Eagles defense. And I think that if they were fully healthy, they would be. But I can't use that as an excuse because every team, like I said, every team deals with injuries. But I wish I could be up here rubbing it in Pete's face about how killer the Cowboys defense is, but that's just not the case right now.
We currently have a third string safety playing. So I mean, injuries are going to hurt every team, but some people just kind of man up and go forward, and some people got to cry and complain about the inevitable. So it's all right.
Yeah, it's a shame too, because I think at the beginning of the season, all of us probably circled this game as the biggest game on the schedule, and now because the way things have played out and because of injuries, I feel like the game has lost some of its mustard, so to speak.
Definitely,
Minshew is gonna
Minshew mania, huh?
Dominate. He's gonna dominate. I believe in Minshew.
I was waiting for the next chapter of the Pork Chop Bowl, the Bounty Bowl, and all the things at Christmas time and everything like that, but that has been taken away. We'll take a further look at this game and perhaps poke around the league in the fourth quarter. Fourth quarter of Why Eagles Why? Well, some of the smack talk value is gone from the Eagles and Cowboys, and now it's a matter of what is their task between now and the rest of the season. So, Pete, I'll throw to you first. For the Eagles, what is the task between now and the end of the regular season?
I think it comes down to staying healthy. The big players on the team, the rest of them staying healthy. I think it comes down to Jalen Hurts getting healthy. There's mixed reports whether he's playing this week or not. I don't think he's going to play this week. If we needed to win a little more, I think he would. And I think Minshew is a good backup. If you look at Minshew's career numbers, I mean, he has a 64 completion percentage career-wise. He's thrown 41 touchdowns to 12 interceptions. He never really lost a quarterback job. He never, because of his play. It was always because of they brought in the draft pick in Jacksonville, and then in Philly he was just a backup. So he's never really gotten that chance to win that starter position. And when he did. I think he won it over Foles in Jacksonville, but he never really lost it there. So I mean, I think Minshew could start on a few teams in the NFL right now. So I'm not worried about if he has to play 1, 2 or 3 games the rest of the season for the Eagles to clinch the number 1 seed. But my biggest worry is what does Jalen Hurts do now as far as his MVP run? If you ask him, he probably wouldn't care about that. He'll say that doesn't matter as long as the team win the Super Bowl, blah blah blah. But it is a big deal because I already said that I think Mahomes has the numbers of a stereotypical MVP, but I think Jalen Hurts, with everything he's done, everything he's overcome, has a chance, especially if they win that number 1 seed, which it looks like they're going to. But the question now comes down to, they could win that number 1 seed without Jalen Hurts having to step on the field again to the playoffs. So, I mean, if that happens, do the people that vote MVP, do they look at as like a kind of a knock against him and give it to Mahomes? Because Mahomes is going to have way higher stats at that point if that happens. So I mean, it's an interesting topic. I mean, going into the last week, a lot of people were giving it to Hurts, no doubt about it. Now, say Minshew comes out and they win the game, do they rest Hurts the rest of the season until the playoffs, and then his playoff hopes kind of go away because Mahomes just kind of runs away with it as far as the stats? We don't know. It's an interesting little side story, but it's something to follow.
Yeah, what a great problem. Too good, too soon. You wrap everything up, and because Bill, if Jalen Hurts has a hangnail, you have to bench him. We saw Andy Reid bench his regulars at the end of 2004, and it was a good move. They lost some games, and then they ended up in the Super Bowl. And then we saw what Nick Foles developed leading into the end of 2017. So with that overview, how do you feel the Eagles have to view the home stretch of games here?
It's funny you mention that, because the Eagles' 13 wins ties a team season record, and with the 2004 and 2017 teams. So we know what happened those two seasons. And I think, if you look at the big picture, I mean, reality, Jalen Hurts, yes, has played a big role in those 13 wins, but so many other players have contributed. So if those other players step up, like in 2017 when Nick Foles, was the hate to say it, the Disney story of the year, but you have the next man up mentality here, and if because you want, like I've said all season, yes, it's great to when they were undefeated, it's great. With the 13-1 number one seed. But in reality, it's all about what do you do in the playoffs? And if Jalen Hurts is not 100% right now, I'd rather rest him and rest any other starters who need time to heal. So they're ready for the postseason. Because you remember, if they lock up that number one seed, they get that extra week of rest. So essentially, it'd be like taking off the preseason again. So it's all about taking care of business right now without dealing with any further injuries, making any players that are beat up. You don't want anyone to be out for the season at this point. Sort of like Indianapolis just lost their star running back Jonathan Taylor for the rest of the season. They obviously don't have anything to play for this season, so in that particular situation, you rest the starters. Here, you have something in the Eagles situation is they're going for something bigger. So you want to make sure that everyone's healthy for when that playoff time comes around, because they're going to the playoffs. It's just a matter of when who they're going to be playing and when.
And Matt, the same philosophy as far as reaching the playoffs and you don't know who you're going to play holds, although there is now a growing suspicion that things could work out for the Cowboys and that they're a wild card, and they face Tampa Bay and a depleted Tom Brady, which would be a nice break, I guess, at this point. They've had trouble with Tampa Bay, and they lost earlier this year to Tampa Bay. But since then, we're seeing that this may not be the worst of worlds for the Cowboys if it works out that way.
Yeah, I mean, I would still be, like you said, they lost to them to open the 2021 season. They lost pretty badly to them to open this year. Both teams have changed tremendously since that week one game. But you still have an uneasy feeling going into Tampa Bay facing Tom Brady, because he is still Tom Brady, even though they're blowing 17-point leads to the Bengals, who are also a very good team. But the Cowboys, I mean, they still have a lot to play for. They need to. They clinched a playoff spot when the Giants beat the Commanders on Sunday Night Football this past week. The Cowboys are officially in the playoffs, but they definitely still have, they have 3 games left, and they need to win 2 of them to secure the 5th seed, which would obviously, land them going on the road in the wild card round to face the winner of the NFC South. But they still have stuff to. I mean, they still have a lot to play for in the fact that you don't want to slip out of that 5 seed, because if you slip out of that 5 seed, then you risk you're either going to go and face the 49ers on the road, which we saw what happened when they came to Dallas last year. They won, and they're even better this year. So you definitely don't want to see that happen. or the other scenario is because they're likely not going to fall to the seventh seed, so they wouldn't face the Eagles. So yeah, if it's not the 49ers, then they would then go on and face the either them or the I'm blanking on the Vikings in Minnesota, which the Cowboys handled the Vikings 40-3 earlier this year in Minnesota, but you still don't want to go to that. That's a ruckus environment. It gets pretty intense there for games. They have really good home field advantage. So obviously, of those three teams between the Vikings, the Buccaneers, or the Niners, you want to go face the Buccaneers. So not only do they have a lot, they still have a lot to play for in terms of winning, securing that fifth seed, but they have a lot to play for in terms of figuring things out offensively and defensively. The offense has played well the last few weeks, but it's been spotty where they'll go on hot streaks. They'll have a few possessions where they score each possession, or they'll have equally as cold streaks. So outside of just the standings and making sure you secure that 5 spot with 2 more wins, they have a lot to play for still in terms of figuring out the offense, figuring out the situation at cornerback with the injuries there. So there's still a lot to figure out. They clinched the playoff spot, so they're for sure going to make the postseason, but there's still a lot of figuring out to do in a lot of different aspects for the Cowboys.
What a world we have when a team can say, we want to win 2 games so that we can face the GOAT. How times have changed. All right. We'll take an overtime look at the Eagles Cowboys right ahead. Overtime of why Eagles why. Well, my prediction, first of all, watch most of the games. They're on Saturday this week. It's a heavy Saturday schedule. And my prediction is that Hurts is on the sidelines, and I say Dallas 28, Philadelphia Eagles 23. Go ahead, Pete. What about you?
I'll do a Pete's pick, and then I'll make a prediction of the Eagles game. So my pick this week, there's a lot of tough games, but on Christmas Eve, the Giants play the Vikings. The Vikings are a 3.5-point favorite. I think the Giants are just falling right now, so I would take the Vikings, and I would give the 3.5 points. It's in Minnesota, and like I said, the Giants. I just think I know they just won, but I just think they just don't have the talent to keep up with an offense like the Vikings. And as far as the Eagles game, I still think they can win this game. It's probably going to be a lot closer than I originally thought. But I think Gardner Minshew has the talent to beat an overrated defense like the Cowboys. Now, I do think it's a close game. I'll say 24-23 Eagles.
All right. How about you, Bill?
Yeah, I think the Eagles just take care of business this week. I think close to Pete's score. I'm going Eagles 24, Cowboys 21. I just think that underdog mentality is going to come through again, and they're just going to clinch that number 1 seed and make these last 2 weeks of the regular season pretty much meaningless.
All right, Matt, how about you?
Yeah, I have the Cowboys winning 28-24, home field advantage, and then just being the more desperate team. Like I said, they have to get two of these next 3 games to close out the year here. So I think that I think the Eagles will be up for the game still. Even though they have far less to play for, they basically clinched. They're not officially, but they've all but clinched the NFC first seed. They've all but clinched the NFC East. So while they have a lot less to play for, I do still think it'll be a tight game. 28-24 Cowboys win. And then I have a mayor's bet proposition for Pete if he's interested.
Go ahead for it. Yeah.
So we can go back and forth if we want to change it up a little bit, but I'm thinking, because you write for Eagles, I write for howaboutthem.com. How about the winner? If the Cowboys win, I can do a guest post on your site and talk about how obnoxious Eagles fans are and how they think that they're gritty and yada yada, but in reality they're all just kind of assholes. And then vice versa. If the Eagles win, you can do a post on HBT about why Cowboys fans are cockroaches and the worst people on the planet. If you're down for that,
I'm down. Deal.
Or straight win, right? No spread.
Yeah, no
point,
no points.
Perfect. Sounds like a plan.
I like that idea.
Yeah, it could
We
really
don't need the mayors of both cities saying, "I'll give you oranges" or "I'll give you cheesesteaks." No, we've got the odds and the stakes right here. Hey, I think this is interesting. Both Matt and I are seeing 28 points for the Cowboys and 23 or 24 points for the Eagles. We're all in the same ballpark about how many points the Eagles score. So the key will be what the Eagles defense and the Dallas offense does. Hey, what a lot of fun this has been. Matt, thank you for joining us. It's always fun to get another perspective on the team the Eagles are going to face. So we thank you for being with us. And Pete and Bill, it's always a great pleasure to see you guys again. So for Pete, for Bill, and for Matt, this is Dave Bontempo saying so long for Why Eagles Why. And please remember, hit like and subscribe to be notified about future videos.